It's time for season 8. And what's our topic? Hope. My hope for the season is that as you hear each person share, whether they're an expert in their field or whether they're a mom sharing part of their family's story, that you're going to hear some of that and you're going to say, oh, that's part of my story too. This is NICU Babies Parent Support with Catherine Whitaker, a podcast from Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit that provides free personalized support, resources, and community before, during, and after a NICU stay. My conversations here focus on education and personal stories with medical and hospital professionals, counselors, therapists, and NICU moms and dads from across the country. So whether you're preparing for a NICU stay, you're currently there, or you're months and years past your stay, you belong here. The NICU is hard. We're here to help. I'm your host, Catherine Whitaker, the mom of 6 children, including my very own NICU baby, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the podcast. We are going to end the year strong. It's time for season 8, and what's our topic? Hope. I felt like it might be time, particularly this time of the year, to talk about hope. And I think what led me to that decision was a lot of reasons. One, because there have been some guests that I've had a hankering. That's a good Texas twang for you. I've had a hankering to get some of these guests on the podcast for a while. They have been on my wish list for a while. And I was trying to find the best topic to highlight the best and most poignant parts of their story, the parts of their story that I knew you might relate to, that might resonate with you, and that might leave you with hope. And I rounded them up. I think what started it, and I think maybe I mentioned this in season 7, it's been a year, y'all. I'll say that with our preemie, who is now officially in high school. That is hard to believe, that our preemie born 15 years ago. Well, I guess when this episode comes out, he will not yet be 15, but a week after this episode comes out, he will be 15. It's hard to believe that 15 years ago, some days it felt like it lasted, days lasted years, but man, we're in high school now. And so many people along the way gave us hope. They were the life preserver when I needed them. And this year has been particularly challenging medically for him. And while I'm not going to share all the details, I am going to say this. We have spent more time in both new and old specialist offices and in imaging centers and labs and all the places than we have in a very long time. And I found myself reaching out to a few friends in the trenches, or some friends that had been in the trenches with us all those years ago. And I just needed a life preserver. I needed someone to listen. I needed someone to remind me that spiraling with a box of Kleenex in the back of my closet may not be the best option. And that there were people out there that could help us, that could give me some hope. And the crazy thing is that I had planned this season of hope long before any of that happened. It's funny how Providence works that way. But as it turns out, I'm also the one in need of hope. So doing all of these interviews this season has been such a balm for my soul. And we're many years out. Maybe you are weeks out of your NICU stay, or maybe you're listening to this and you are smack dab in the middle of a NICU stay and you're sitting in the rocking chair right now with your sweet baby in your arms thinking, how am I going to do this? And I'll tell you how. You're going to listen to some of these episodes and you're going to re-find your feet again. So I felt like it was important to talk about some hope. So finding hope in hard places, which you don't have to have a NICU baby to be in a hard place. So finding hope in hard places, finding hope after really hard things. It could be a medical diagnosis with your child. It could be the biggest and worst loss. It could be the loss of the life that you thought you might have. And I wanted to give you hope in the middle of chaos. I think we could all say that our lives are somewhat chaotic, right? Sometimes we just get an extra dose. And so this season is focused on those 3 things: finding hope in hard places, hope after hard things, and hope in the middle of chaos. So I hope it makes you feel seen. So some of my guests this season, we're going to be focusing on hope for grandparents. That has been a topic that many of y'all have emailed about, particularly grandparents, and said, hey, I have a daughter or a son, and they just had a baby in the NICU, and I'm the grandparent, and how do I help? So, providentially, it's a really fun story. That's actually next week's episode or next time's episode. We're going to focus on how does a grandparent help support a NICU baby? We've got hope in special education. Some of y'all are just starting to put your kids in an academic environment, whether it's a pre-K program, maybe pre-K 2 or 3, or even well into their academic years, and you're needing some hope and feeling not so overwhelmed with special education. We're going to find hope in medically complex children. I think that is a whole topic that we haven't really gone deep enough yet. And so the guest that I have, you're going to love her. She's a good friend of mine. And what does hope look like after death? I know that there've been episodes every season where we have touched on grief, and this season is no different. There'll be some hope about illnesses in the fall, particularly RSV. I know you're like, don't say that acronym, Catherine. Don't will it into existence. But if you find yourself in a hospital or with a diagnosis that you're like, this feels hard, I'm going to give you some hope there. Also, and I'm pretty excited about this one, we talk a lot about moms and dads, caregivers in the NICU. We talk a lot about NICU babies, but we have never touched on NICU siblings. And so this is a season of first. So we're talking to an expert, a parenting expert about siblings. She's also a guest I've wanted for a while. We're going to be talking about how do you find hope? How do you find courage to have another baby after a NICU stay? That's one that I've had many of y'all email us about and say, I don't know how to make that decision. And can you just have someone on the podcast to walk us through how they made their decision? It may not be the one that we make, but I think hearing about how someone came to that decision might give us some hope in our own household. So you asked and I answered. And finally, I'm excited because this particular guest was my very first guest back in 2023 when I took the podcast over from our founder, Kelly Kelly. And at the time, her son was waiting on a transplant, and her son has received that transplant. And I love that is the episode that we're going to end it on this season is about how do you find hope when you've gone through a really hard season with your child, and then something like a heart transplant happens and your life changes forever. So that's a lot. And these conversations are, I think they're life-giving. I think that they remind me that everybody's story is unique. And as I listen to people share bits and pieces of their story, I can't help but think, oh, that I can identify with that. Or, hey, maybe my kid didn't have that diagnosis, but how she feels definitely can relate to that. And so my hope for the season is that as you hear each person share, whether they're an expert in their field or whether they're a mom sharing part of their family's story, that you're going to hear some of that and you're going to say, oh, that's part of my story too. And they found their way to the other side. And my desire is that feeling of hope, that feeling of being seen, that feeling of gratitude and accompaniment in the journey is going to make you fall in love with this season. So we have some amazing episodes. We're going to take you all the way until December, and then I'm going to let you enjoy the holidays and all the chaos that comes with the end of the year with your families, and then the podcast will pick back up after the new year. But I felt like at a time when maybe there feels like a lot of jubilation, like people are excited about in our house, we're excited about a new college football season, or maybe you're excited about the changing weather, or you're excited about maybe a new specialist that you have, and you're like, okay, we're getting excited about all of this. I also wanted to infuse a lot of hope on the other side, because sometimes it feels like that might be in short supply. So that's what you can look forward to this season. Know that we have 7 other seasons full of great guests and great topics. Last season, so season 7 was all about tending the heart, the home, and the body. The season before that was What do I do? Like life after a NICU. Do I need to spell that? LIFE. Life after a NICU admission. And then all of our podcasts pre-2023 and before, there are 100+ episodes for you to listen to. So if you're the one that's in the NICU, I hope that you take the time to find a topic in there, find a guest that really resonates with you and dive in and go deep and listen. Or if you're on the other side of that and you know someone who's in the NICU, send them a link to the podcast. We would love to have them join our community. And as always, the Hand to Hold community is here for you. You can log on to handtohold.org. There are all of our resources are free for you, for your siblings, your other children in your home, your spouse, you. There is not, I think, a category of a NICU experience that is not covered by the support of Hand to Hold. And I love that this podcast is connected to them. They changed our life. And I'm sitting here recording this thinking I am no longer the same person in all the best of ways because of my interaction with Hand to Hold and all the amazing volunteers. So just know that that's a resource for you. So dive in, get ready. 2 weeks, you're going to hear the very first episode. It's with one of my favorite people. She is my pediatrician. And this is a little bit about what you're going to hear on our very first episode of season 8.
Remembering and realizing the parent's the boss. We're not the boss. So we are ready to sit and listen. If we're washing hands every 10 minutes, we're washing hands. If we're wearing a mask, we're wearing a mask. We're taking the test, we're taking the test. If we're waiting in the waiting room while they spend time together for the beginning of each visit, then we're waiting in the waiting room. So we're not the boss. You tell us what to do and we are willing to do it.